With the FAPLA offensive against Mavinga in full swing, the South African Defence Force was in a hurry to get its own conventional forces into action before the town fell to the enemy. Mavinga, with its dirt airstrip, was a key logistics base for UNITA, and its fall would alter the strategic situation in the theatre. 3 Squadron deployed 8 Mirage F-1CZ fighters to Rundu on September the 4th. Though an older aircraft, the fighter pilots hoped their skills and training would give them the edge over the MiGs in the coming battles. With 12 Mirage F-1AZ strike aircraft from 1 Squadron and 4 Buccaneer bombers from 24 Squadron, the Air Force base at Grootfontein became the centre of South African air operations. The Buccaneers and Mirages would be facing the full host of Soviet air defence missiles, and it was hoped that advances in tactics could overcome any technological problems caused by the arms embargo against South Africa. The South African Air Force wasted no time in preparing for their own air offensive, which would begin on September the 16th. The South Africans wanted to keep their intervention in Angola a secret, as they would doubtless be condemned by the international community. As such, they only deployed enough men to stiffen UNITA's defences, yet still afford them plausible deniability. This formation was designated as Combat Group Bravo, commanded by Commandant Dion Ferreira. Its main striking component were the 3 artillery batteries that could strike FAPLA at a long range. These would need to be guarded by 3-2 Battalion, however, so 240 men in 30 Caspers from 101 Battalion and the 32 Battalion Anti-Tank Squadron would become the first SADF units committed to the battle. Whilst the SADF generals were hoping that the artillery and airstrikes would be sufficient, they realized that UNITA may not be able to deal the knockout blow. For that, they needed a mechanized force of their own. And so, a week or two after Combat Group Bravo was formed, 61 MEC, South Africa's only mechanized force permanently stationed in Southwest Africa, Namibia, was called up to deal the decisive hammer blow against FAPLA, after they would be softened up by the artillery and the air force. Based at Umutia in Namibia, 61 MEC was South Africa's most experienced mechanized battalion, staffed by highly professional permanent force officers and all volunteer national servicemen. The 350 men of 61 MEC were eager to add to their already impressive battle honours. Commanded by the energetic Commandant Bok Smit, 61 MEC was in the theatre by September the 5th.
Ons wil wen. Nie ek nie, ons wil wen. Jy maak 'n bydrae. Ek sal die leiding gee. Jy sal die vyand dood. Ek sal vir jou sê hoe om dit te doen. Jy en ek is 'n span en ons is 'n wenspan.
FAPLA, the armed forces of the communist MPLA, deployed their best formations in the Mavinga offensive of 1987. With over 15,000 men in 7 brigades, FAPLA was hoping that even with South African intervention, they would be able to bludgeon their way through to Mavinga and inflict a devastating loss on UNITA. UNITA, for its part, would field about 6,000 men in regular and semi-regular formations. In spite of being a largely guerrilla army, UNITA was equipped with sophisticated anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles. In fact, the 200-plus Stingers supplied by the Reagan administration would be the only weapons capable of challenging the MiG-23s. By the beginning of September, FAPLA's massive offensive had succeeded in capturing a large area of southeastern Angola from UNITA. It became obvious that even with reinforcements flown in from other fronts, UNITA was facing defeat if the South African intervention did not intensify. By this time, the only geographical feature separating the FAPLA brigades from the UNITA supply base at Mavinga was the Lomba River. All SADF efforts were therefore directed at preventing FAPLA from crossing the Lomba. 47 Brigade had driven around the source of the Lomba and was in a position on the south bank, from where they could clear UNITA opposition on the riverside as the other brigades made their crossing. However, heavy South African shelling had largely stopped the advance of 47 Brigade, as their troops were forced to dig in to avoid the deadly artillery. This meant that for now the primary threat was 21 Brigade, as it was the closest to Mavinga and was already in place on the north bank. If they could successfully cross the Lomba, then the defence of Mavinga might become impossible. On the 9th of September, UNITA reported that 21 Brigade had begun crossing the Lomba and had established a bridgehead on the south bank. All SADF efforts were immediately directed at destroying this bridgehead before they could get the bulk of their forces and heavy equipment across the Lomba. Commandant Hartsleeve, commander of Bravo Group, was dispatched with his task force of one troop of 4 Ratel 90s and 120 men in 14 Caspers, sent to investigate and, if necessary, destroy the FAPLA bridgehead on the south bank. Manning the Caspers were men from 101 Battalion of the SWATF. 101 Battalion were veterans of the Bush War against SWAPO. Together, the Ovambo troops and their white officers had inflicted such massive losses on the insurgents that 2 of their companies could be spared for the fighting against FAPLA. It would be a different kind of warfare than that they were used to, against much better equipped opponents, but these elite troops were confident and ready for action. When the SADF reached the suspected bridgehead on the south bank, they came into contact with the FAPLA BTR-60, which was shot out by one of the Ratel 90s. FAPLA responded with artillery fire from the north bank, and the SADF forces withdrew for the night when they were unable to coordinate a counterattack with UNITA. Major Hannes Nordman was ordered to bring the remaining Ratels of 3-2 Battalion's anti-tank platoon and another company of infantry into position before first light. Major Nordman positioned the anti-tank Ratels facing north towards the river to guard against any vehicle crossing, whilst 101 Battalion and a troop of Ratels would head west to deal with the enemy bridgehead on the south bank. The bridgehead consisted of a battalion of infantry dug into defensive positions and supported by ample artillery on the north bank. Having made contact with the FAPLA forces, Hartsleeve received the order from the Falcon: sort them out. The Caspers advanced against the dug-in infantry, pouring in fire from their cannons and machine guns. With their backs to the open floodplain and river beyond, FAPLA put up fierce resistance as they tried in vain to drive the South Africans back. They called in all available artillery support from the north bank as the battle raged fiercely throughout the morning of September the 10th. The Caspers advanced relentlessly as they could sense the panic in their trapped enemy. The Caspers' deadly fire forced the FAPLA infantry from their defensive positions and out into the open floodplain as they fled for their lives towards the river. As they emerged into the open, South African artillery caused devastating losses on the FAPLA infantry. Caught between the advancing Caspers and the artillery, the unfortunate FAPLA infantry died in droves. Over 100 were killed on the floodplain. Hearing their comrades in distress on the south bank, 21 Brigade tried to send tanks across a TMM bridging vehicle to their assistance. They would be coming directly into the path of Major Hannes Nordman and his anti-tank Ratels. The 3-2 Battalion anti-tank squadron was debuting its ZT-3 anti-tank missile in this engagement. The highly sophisticated laser beam riding anti-tank missile was based on the American TOW-2 design. In a major coup for sanctions busting, the South African armament industry had managed to obtain designs for this highly sophisticated tank killer. The only problem was that the system was so new that Major Nortman and his crews were essentially using pre-production prototype missiles, and though highly sophisticated, there remained many bugs to be ironed out before the missile was truly ready for mass production. Let's listen in to the actual audio recording of Major Nortman and his missile crew as they engaged FAPLA's T-55s on the first battle of September the 10th, 1987.
Oh my God. Bring it down. Oh my God. Okay, next one. There's something wrong with it. Next one. Oh yeah, for fuck's sake. Okay, I'll get it over there. They're going haywire, they're fucked. These things don't want to work. Okay, try the next one. Okay. One more. Nothing? Oh, no. Okay, stop it. Get out of here, bastard. Get out of here. None. Okay, we are really fighting now. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, next one, good. Yes! Yes! I got him! I got him! Move back! Move back! I got him! I got him! Right! Right! I got the gun! Elevate! Elevate! Go forward, go forward. It's not okay. Yes. Oh no. Oh man. Okay, they can't down now. They can't down. Right, next one. Next one. There's one more. One more. Okay. One forward, come forward. Forward. Whoa, whoa. Yes. Are you ready? Not it. Hey, there's nothing coming out. Come back, come back. Nothing's coming out. Go back!
Ja. Wacht maar, hier is wat. Hier maar open doen. Dat is blijft de wet, man, kijk. Dat is fuck.
Got you loud again, Major. Okay.
Op het kijk.
Okay. Okay.
Laag.
I can't check the other one. I can't check Okay, fall back, last missile. That's the last missile, let's go back. So next minute. What's going on here there? What is it? They're all fucked up. Yes, what a shot,
Whilst the armies were battling it out on the ground, in the air above the Lomba River, the first combat between Mirage and MiG was about to take place. 10 MiG-23 fighters were in the air above Bravo Group, 8 were unsuccessfully bombing the ground elements, whilst 2 provided top cover. 4 Mirage F-1CZs from Free Squadron were scrambled to intercept the MiGs. The Mirages arrived at the target area, 350 kilometers inside Angola, and found the attack still in progress. The top cover MiGs turned to attack the South Africans. The Mirages pulled in as the jets closed into combat range. The Mirages fired first, releasing 2 Matra Magic R550 missiles at the hard-turning MiGs. The missiles exploded harmlessly behind the MiGs, who used their superior performance to disengage from combat and return to base. With 61 mech now deployed in theatre, the South African military forces on the Lomba were given the ad hoc designation of 20 South Africa Brigade. This brigade consisted of 3 battle groups and an artillery regiment. Battle Group Bravo would again form the basis of the Quick Reaction Force, whilst the units of 61 mech making up Battle Groups Alpha and Charlie got themselves acclimatized. On the 11th of September, 20 SA Brigade received a report from UNITA that 2 battalions of FAPLA infantry, with supporting tanks and artillery, had established a strong point east of 47 Brigade's main positions. This force was being used to shield 47 Brigade, which was isolated from the other brigades on the east bank of the Lomba River. Colonel Ferreira ordered the Bravo Group Reaction Force to investigate the area. This force consisted of 2 companies of 101 battalion men aboard 30 Caspers, 8 Rifle 90s from 32 Battalion's Anti-Tank Squadron, commanded by Major Hannes Nordman, and a further 4 Rifle 90s from 61 Mech for backup. Combat Group Charlie, under the command of Major David Lotter, was placed in the reserve. On the 13th of September, when Bravo Group arrived in position, there was a disagreement with their UNITA guides about where the enemy was. UNITA had indicated that the enemy force was occupying one of their old logistics bases. This was a serious development, as all UNITA bases were honeycombed with trenches and foxholes that could easily swallow up motorized units. Commandant Hartsleaf decided to call in 120mm mortar fire on the suspected enemy positions to see if he could get a reaction. The leading companies soon reported a battalion of FAPLA infantry retreating to the north. Caught out in the open, the The FAPLA battalion was sitting ducks for the Caspers and Rifles, who raced forward and poured in their fire. With nowhere to run or hide, the exposed FAPLA battalion was almost completely annihilated after being trapped at the edge of the Shona. Nearly 200 perished that afternoon. With everything going according to plan so far, Commandant Hartsleaf ordered Bravo to assault the FAPLA units inside the base itself. The South Africans moved into the base and soon came into contact with pockets of FAPLA infantry, who put up fierce resistance. In the chaos of the ensuing firefight, several vehicles ran foul of the trenches and got stuck. In the leading group of Rifles, 2 vehicles were stuck in the trenches, whilst a third vehicle tried to pull them out. Suddenly, Lieutenant Alves in the remaining Rifle came on the air to warn that a force of tanks was attacking from the west. When he was killed by a sniper's bullet to the neck seconds later, his driver panicked and drove the Rifle into a ditch out in the Shona. The tanks advanced onwards, ignoring the vehicles ahead, and made straight for Lieutenant Alves' stranded Rifle. All 7 men aboard were killed. Confusion reigned as an entire Rifle troop was immobilized in the face of a tank attack. Commandant Hartsleaf struggled to bring up his remaining Rifle troop from the flank. The men aboard the Caspers from 101 Battalion, being neither trained nor equipped to fight tanks, fled from the battlefield at top speed. It fell to Commandant Hartsleaf himself to lead the attack against the tanks. Using superior maneuverability and unorthodox tactics, Hartsleaf and his Rifle troop engaged the tanks with fire from their 90mm guns. It took 8 direct hits before the tank was destroyed. Meanwhile, Major Hannes Nordman led the heroic effort to rescue the men and equipment in the stranded Rifles. Running forward along the trenches, he engaged and killed 2 FAPLA infantrymen with his R5, whilst they were in the process of ransacking one of the maroon vehicles. Inside the vehicle, Nordman found a terrified driver hiding in the camo bag. For the recovery of the Rifles, whilst under continuous fire, Major Nordman was awarded the Honoris Crux. With 4 vehicles still stranded in the trenches and Bravo Group becoming combat ineffective, the Falcon ordered Combat Group Charlie, commanded by Major David Lotter, to take over from Bravo and recover the remaining vehicles and equipment. Combat Group Charlie was the reserve, consisting mainly of units from 61 Mech. These mechanized infantrymen were well trained in anti-tank warfare and were eager for battle. However, by the time that Charlie got to the target area, it was already dark. Being short of illumination flares, Major Lotter ordered the huts in the base area to be set alight for illumination. Advancing in cautious bounds of 100 meters so as not to get any further vehicles stuck, by 10 p.m. Charlie had recovered 2 Caspers and were looking for a further 2. Suddenly, 8 tanks attacked from less than 100 meters away. With cohesion broken by the tanks on the right flank, Major Lotter ordered Lieutenant Johan Kuish, commanding the left flank, to move up and assist. Kuish drove forward and immediately engaged the tanks with murderous fire. Lotter decided to withdraw Charlie until daybreak, but was cut off by a force of tanks approaching from the south. Lieutenant Puish destroyed 2 of these tanks with his Rifle 90.